Picture this. Your kid walks through the front door, quiet. Head down. You ask what happened. He says nothing. But you know something happened. You've seen that look before. And when he finally tells you that some bigger kid took his stuff, shoved him around, made him feel small, something shifts inside you. A very old, very protective instinct kicks in. And you think, I need to fix this. Most parents stop there. They call the school. They wait. They hope it gets better. But what if going further, much further than anyone expected, ended up changing not just your son's life, but the life of the very kid who hurt him? This is the story of Aubrey, his son Jordan, and a bully named Tamarion. It starts with anger. It ends with something that most people never expect to come from a confrontation like this. And somewhere in the middle, there's a lesson about human beings that cuts right to the heart of why we hurt each other in the first place. It happened in Houston. Jordan had been dealing with it for a while. The kind of bullying that doesn't leave bruises you can see. The kind that chips away at you quietly, day by day, hallway by hallway, until going to school starts to feel like walking into something you can't escape. Aubrey did what any parent does first. He went through the proper channels. He talked to the teacher. He explained what was happening. He waited for something to change. Nothing changed. He went to the school administration. He sat across from someone behind a desk and explained it again. He waited again. Nothing changed. Then one afternoon Jordan came home and told his dad that the bully had taken his phone. Not pushed him. Not said something cruel. Taken something that belonged to him. And that was the moment Aubrey decided the proper channels had run out. He was furious. He decided to take things into his own hands. Now, when you hear that, your brain probably fills in what comes next. You imagine a confrontation. Raised voices. An adult leaning over a kid, making a point with his size. Maybe a threat. Maybe something ugly. But that's not what happened. Aubrey went to the school. He waited outside. When Tamarion came out, this bigger kid, the one who had been making Jordan's life miserable, Aubrey walked up to him and asked him a single question. Why do you keep bullying my son? That's it. Not a threat. Not a lecture. A question. And the answer Tamarion gave back stopped Aubrey cold. Tamarion told him that he was being bullied too. Aubrey didn't know what to do with that. He looked at this kid, physically bigger than most of the others, someone who had power in the way teenagers measure power, and he tried to make it make sense. He pushed back. He said, "You're so much bigger than everybody. How are you getting bullied?" And then Tamarion told him the truth. His family had lost their house. Money was so tight that Tamarion came to school every single day wearing the same clothes. And every single day, other kids noticed. Other kids said things. Other kids made him feel small in the way that only words can, not with fists, but with laughter. With pointing. With the specific cruelty of children who haven't yet learned that words leave marks. Tamarion wasn't a monster. He was a kid in pain. Doing what hurt people do, spreading the hurt outward, to anyone he felt he had power over, because it was the only place in his world where he had any. Aubrey stood there and felt something change inside him. The anger was still there. But something else moved in front of it. Something slower and heavier and more honest. Compassion. He sat Jordan and Tamarion down together, right there, outside the school. He let them talk. He made space for something that almost never happens in these situations, an actual conversation. Not mediated by a counselor. Not scheduled for a Tuesday afternoon in an office. Just two kids, and one adult who chose to stay present instead of staying angry. They hashed it out. They said the things that needed to be said. And by the end of it, something had shifted between them. Slowly at first, and then all at once. They became friends. Not acquaintances. Not the kind of polite distance that passes for resolution. Actually friends. Jordan and Tamarion. The kid who was bullied and the kid who was bullying him. Together. But Aubrey wasn't finished. He understood something that most people miss when a situation like this gets resolved. He understood that the behavior was a symptom. That Tamarion wasn't fundamentally broken, he was reacting to something real, something external, something that could actually be addressed. So Aubrey took Tamarion shopping. He didn't announce it. He didn't make it a big moment. He just took this kid to a store and let him pick out new clothes. Let him feel what it feels like to walk into a room not bracing for the jokes. Not rehearsing how to act like the comments don't land. The change in Tamarion was immediate. Not just in how he looked, in how he carried himself. In how he treated other people. In what was possible for him once the daily weight of that particular humiliation had been lifted. One act. And a kid transforms. But even that wasn't where the story ended. Aubrey looked at what Tamarion's family was going through, the lost house, the financial pressure that was grinding everyone down, and decided that the problem was bigger than new clothes. He set up a GoFundMe. He asked strangers on the internet to help a family they'd never met. He explained what happened, what he found, and what he believed this family needed to get back on their feet. The goal was $7,000. The internet raised $31,000. $31,000. From strangers. For a family they had no connection to. Because one man decided to ask a question instead of throwing a punch. There's something worth sitting with here. Think about how this story could have gone. Aubrey shows up at that school angry, and he was angry, that part is real, and instead of asking Tamarion a question, he makes a point. He intimidates him. He makes Tamarion feel exactly the way his son was made to feel. The cycle just keeps moving. Jordan sees his dad win the confrontation. Tamarion goes home to his broken situation, angrier and more ashamed. Nothing actually changes. The hurt just redistributes. That's the version of this story that happens most of the time. But Aubrey asked a question. And that question cracks something open. Psychologists who study conflict resolution have a term for what Aubrey did almost instinctively. They call it perspective taking, the ability to pause your own emotional response long enough to genuinely ask what the other person's experience might be. It sounds simple. It is extraordinarily rare in moments of real anger. Research by Dr. Adam Galinsky at Columbia Business School has shown that perspective taking, in conflict situations, consistently produces better outcomes than either avoidance or confrontation alone. Not because it's soft. Because it's accurate. Because it maps reality better. Tamarion wasn't a bully who needed to be scared straight. He was a kid whose circumstances were producing a behavior. Address the circumstances, and the behavior changes. Aubrey didn't know the research. He just asked the question. And here's what that tells you about human beings. Cruelty rarely comes from nowhere. The kid who is making your child's life miserable is almost always dealing with something you cannot see. That doesn't excuse the behavior. Jordan's suffering was real, and it deserved to be taken seriously. But it does mean that punishing the surface rarely solves what's underneath. Dr. Brené Brown has spent decades studying shame, what it does to people, how it drives behavior, how it spreads. One of her core findings is that shame and aggression are deeply linked. When people feel deeply ashamed, they lash outward. They push the shame down by making someone else feel smaller. It's not a conscious strategy. It's a reflex. And it only stops when the shame itself is addressed. Tamarion's shame was walking into school every single day in the same clothes while other kids laughed. That was the engine. The bullying was just the exhaust. Aubrey removed the engine. There's also something in this story about what happens when adults show up differently than children expect. Tamarion walked out of that school expecting to be confronted, expecting someone bigger and angrier than him to make him feel exactly what he'd been making Jordan feel. That's the script he knew. That's how power had always operated in his world. And instead, a man asked him a question. That surprise, that disruption of the expected script, is actually one of the most powerful interventions available to any human being in any conflict. Researchers at the Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley have documented again and again how unexpected warmth, particularly from someone who has every reason to be hostile, produces outsized emotional responses. It disarms. It opens. It makes honesty possible in situations where dishonesty was the only safe option. Tamarion told the truth because the question created space for truth. And the truth made everything else possible. Think about the people in your own life. The ones who are prickly, aggressive, difficult to be around. The ones who you've maybe written off as just being that way. Now ask yourself, what is the Tamarion story that you don't know? What is the thing that is happening off-screen, behind the front they show the world, that is quietly driving all of it? You won't always get to find out. Not every angry person will open up. Not every confrontation leads to a GoFundMe and $31,000 and 2 kids who become friends. But some of them do. And the only way to find out which ones do is to ask the question. Aubrey walked to that school with his fists metaphorically ready. He left having given his son a friendship, a struggling family a home, and a kid in pain a way out of it. He didn't do it by being softer than the situation required. He did it by being more curious than the situation expected. Tonight, when something frustrates you, when someone snaps at you, cuts you off, lets you down, you're going to have a choice. You can react to the surface. Or you can ask the question underneath it. Your kid walked through that door quiet. Head down. You asked what happened. That question changed everything. Changing the way we see people, one story at a time. Every week I share powerful true stories, human psychology, and life-changing lessons that challenge the way we think about conflict, connection, and what it means to be human. If you enjoy stories that make you think deeper, feel more, and see the world differently, you're in the right place. Like if this story moved you. Comment your thoughts below. What would you have done? Share this with someone who needs this reminder. Subscribe for more stories that stay with you long after the video ends.